first off, thanks guys for being here. Really excited to actually see people in like real life and stuff. We planned to go outside, not because of anything other than the space that we were going to go at Keller Williams wouldn't allow us. So this is perfect, a great view. And we're really happy to have Jared's house. So thanks, Jared, for letting us use your spot.
Yeah, this is the first time I've actually used the grass. So I literally got mowed Tuesday.
Yeah.
So.
So a lot has changed in the last 12 months since we've been in our last meetup, probably 14 months. And so we're here to ask questions, learn new things, see what people are doing, see what's working. Really, we're all trying to figure this out, I think, in some sense. Everybody, Jared and I had a bet a year ago when COVID hit that it was the market was going to be down 10%, and I bet it was not. I bet it was going to be up. I won that pretty quickly, but it could have gone the other way, right? I hit the brakes. March, April, May, I hit the brakes, and I have buddies that hit the gas, and I should hit the gas. So you never know. So we're just trying to get educated, get back in the groove of things, and see what people are doing, and go from there. Jared will talk more probably tonight on the landlord-tenant stuff. He's really well informed on that, and I think those are things to be. If you own rentals, you need to pay attention, and so there's going to be a lot of good information there, and we'll talk about some other things as well. So
cool. Quick show of hands, just so I have a sense. How many people here have at least one rental? Okay, good.
Cool.
You want to start there?
Yeah.
You want to start there or you want to start somewhere else?
Yeah, start there.
Okay, so first of all, I'm not a lawyer. Don't play one in real life. So two bills have passed, and Powell and Gunter is going to release. Does everybody know who Powell and Gunter is? Okay. So Powell and Gunter does most of the real estate law. Does that sound a little tweaky?
No, that's
okay.
fine.
They do most of the landlord-tenant law in Tri-Cities. So if you start doing an eviction or things start going sideways, they're usually who most people call. That's almost exclusively what they do. So I was on the phone with them for 40 minutes. They were super gracious with their time. Or I think they are until they charge me. So a couple things are going on. The first one is, how many people have heard that now you can't evict without just cause? Okay, so just cause means that we are now one of 4 states in the entire United States. That means you can't just evict because, you want to move on. We're one of 4 that now you have to give a reason. One of 17 reasons. Otherwise, they get a stay. They also passed a new law that if you're 200% of the federal poverty level, or you're on any government assistance, which is like almost anybody, it feels like nowadays, you get a free attorney. So absorb that for just a second, because it means that every time you have a cause reason to move on and want a different tenant, they're going to show up in court with somebody who has an unlimited budget. So they were telling me stories about people that, they basically have the state behind them with unlimited budgets, and they'll sue over anything. So evictions, she basically said, expect that evictions will take way longer, and at a minimum will cost twice as much.
Which, I'll piggyback on that, means you need to be more professional. You can't get away with, I'm going to own a couple rentals, and it's going to be, here's the Elliott way of doing things is how I would explain it. Not official and not dot the T's and cross the I's or whatever. And so that's why Jared, having this group and having people like that, you got to really be by the book. And if you can't be by the book, you need to find somebody that can hire to be by the book.
Right. Yeah. So the other piece of that is how many people have a lease that at the end of it just kind of goes to month. And I have that too. So effectively, we want to get rid of that going forward in the future. So it's a 12-month, you want more than 12 months by at least a day, because the law gets real bad if you're sub 12 months. So you want at least 12 months, and then it ends. And then you have to give notice more than 60 days before. So they can give you notice 21 days that they're out. You have to give notice almost 2.5 months in advance. So just hold that. We're going to unload some stuff that you're not going to memorize all of it. That's fine. But I want you to hear kind of what it used to be versus what it's going to now. So that's a big deal. But that's how we that's the only way that we can terminate as landlords with no cost. If we have a lease that absolutely ends, doesn't go month to month, and we give them more than 60 days notice, they have to get out. So they're having a eviction pilot program. We're currently not in that problem right now, so I'm not going to tell you about it. I think the overscope right now is that you're probably in one of the more aggressively tenant-friendly states, and that happened just now. So think of like California. This is California 2.0. I don't know another state that's probably in the same level that we just clicked up to. They've tried to pass the laws that they just passed for years, and they just ran it all through. So know that, because I know a bunch of us are landlords. This is a time to get really, really educated as a landlord, because the other side, you give them an eviction notice, they're just like, oh crap, they're going to leave. Now they're going to sue you for attorney's fees with an unlimited budget. So again, didn't really want to start this on like a super.
No, it's not down. It's not down, because there's ways to make money in every type of market. So I look at it this way: if everything always stayed the same, somebody would have figured out the best machine to build that business. So with every challenge, there is opportunities for professional people to come in and make money there. And so they are scary, but then there's also, I would bet there probably will be appeals and there'll be fights in the Supreme Court on this, I would guess. If that happens and you have rentals, you probably should be putting money into those causes, right? And so that's where this stuff matters, but there is opportunities here.
And I think the opportunity is going to be, if you're one of the people that are well informed, there's a whole lot of people that are not at this meeting that are not well informed. I have a lot of friends that have rentals that don't know any of this stuff. So at some point, somebody's going to start saying, this is too much of a headache. They're going to get caught in some crosshairs for attorney's fees, and what should have been a simple eviction is going to turn into a $25,000 nightmare over something that would have felt fair 12 months ago, and they're going to want out. So I think there's going to be opportunity for people, like Elliot said, that run professional, that know what the law is, which just changed a ton. And when people want to sell, you might be that person that's like networking with people and ready to pick something up.
So the question you have to ask yourself, and I've been having this conversation with people quite a bit lately, if you're looking to just maybe own 1 or 2 rentals and it's kind of easy like it seemed like it was back in the day, it could be a lot more headache than it's worth. You might be better off putting your money with an operator that is a national level, or an operator that does other rentals, or pool with groups like that, or have a good property manager lined up that really knows their shit, because there's a lot of terrible property managers out there that won't be as well as educated on this. So you really have to weigh the pros and cons there and make sure you have good safety nets behind you of cash. Like, most people go in this and like, oh, cash flow is $200 a month. Well, I have nothing in the bank account in case anything goes wrong. Well, now something goes wrong, you're screwed. But now you're really screwed if something goes wrong and you have to evict them and you have to fight all these attorneys. It gets really expensive. So having a better safety net to prepare for worst case scenarios matters.
Right. So, and my personality is I like to manage my own stuff. That's me. Like, I like to be on top of it. I tend to think no one's gonna care as much as I do. And it's know yourself. Like, I'm kind of a detail. I mean, this is like the advantage of me and Elliot. I think Elliot tends to delegate really, really effectively, and I tend to be on top of things very, very effectively.
Like, I was supposed to buy name tags. That was my only job.
Literally his only job.
And what did I forget to get? Name tags.
Delegated to Todd. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd. Yeah, thank you.
So versus I'll handle all the little. I mean, that's why I was in charge of like setting everything up, right? So I would just say know yourself. Doesn't mean that it's like good or bad. It just means that if you're the kind of person that doesn't handle details well, then you just walked into a minefield that I think you're going to lose a leg. Yeah. And you're going to have somebody on the other side of it who's going to make you pay for it. Yeah. If you're a detail-oriented person, I think this is actually a really good zone for you, because now a bunch of people that are not informed
are going to have a lot of issues, and they're going to take a big discount on their house because they just want to be done with it.
Questions? Cool. When that newsletter comes out, and they put out a really good newsletter, I'll try to kick it out to the group.
And then we'll also probably do Jared and I will probably do a Q&A, just like a video, Zoom, where we can probably do that in this. Here are some key points, going over things, just to get people so it's more verbally well informed on that.
Cool. Questions?
Yes. So with evictions, is there any kind of law or like statute that's in there that you saw that like when you sell, like in the event that you sell your home, that you can evict? Because I was talking to somebody, and this was probably a week ago, and they were saying that if you sold your home and that was like one of the only ways you can actually evict somebody,
Right.
is if you sell the asset and then therefore have them evicted out of it.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you wanna sell, move into it, or have a family member move into it, then I think you've got to give 60-day notice.
But you can't break a lease though if you have a lease.
Yeah, you can't break the lease, but you can evict.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the caveat to that is if you read the law, because obviously then like it's like cool, I'm gonna sell the house.
I'll sell to you and you sell
Yeah,
to me.
you get out, and so if you don't put it on the market within 30 days and leave it on the market for 90 days at fair market value determined by a realtor,
Yeah.
they can come back on you.
Okay.
So assume that some very, very clever people thought through the language, because obviously I've had some houses that are below market right now, so I figured out how much I'm losing right now in rent, and it's about half of what I live on. So it's a real number for me. So I'm like, oh, what can I do? I'm just telling you, I don't think there's I think, to Elliot's point, playing this professional is the way to play. I
Yeah.
think people that play the line are going to get run over.
Yeah, the other thing you can do, you can stroke way bigger, you're gonna have to stroke way bigger checks to get people out.
Yeah.
So we'll pay people cash for keys often, and the check you're gonna have to write just got maybe added a few numbers to it, potentially. Oregon, you have to pay, even if you're same concept in Portland and Oregon, you have to pay relocation fees up to like $6,000 for people just to move. So there's that, but you're gonna have to pay this anyway if you wanna get around these things. So again, professionalism and having money behind you is what you need to do in this realm.
And the other thing I'd say is tenant screening is going to get, was important, right? I think we could coast for a little while, let's be realistic, because market's so strong, it's been so good. Now all of a sudden, the quality of person, not just do they have a job, but the quality of human in your property really matters. There's some people that just on principle won't screw you, even if they can.
Yeah.
And other people just on principle will screw you, just because they can.
Yeah.
So you will get paid for the ability to read and screen people effectively. So the other thing I'd add is, remember how I said they get a free attorney if they're like 200% of poverty level or whatever? So this is the spot where I would really try to figure out who do you think are the people that are most likely to qualify for an attorney? Like if we're gonna play the game, let's play the game. And I wanna try to figure out who's the person that, and again, like who are your tenants? Like if I have a choice between like a property that's lower end, before, like it cash flows really well. Now, to me, I see 4 attorneys on the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe now all of a sudden that single family residence that on a spreadsheet doesn't look as sexy starts looking a whole lot better in terms of how much energy you have to spend, kind of tenant that you get, and the amount of actual net money you make. Like trying to differentiate the spreadsheet from real life.
Right.
Yeah, because now we can go over this. We've moved in Tri-Cities from a linear market that just grows slowly into more of a cyclical run-up appreciation market. We've seen since 2000, we've seen 148% appreciation. The last 5 years, it's been anywhere from 8 to 10% year-over-year appreciation. So you can then balance that out with a little less cash flow on a middle-level property because you might see more appreciation, but it's still a good tradable asset if it's in the middle income bracket. You probably don't want to go get a $1 million house and have that be your rental, right? And so really what this is causing is unintended consequences for entry-level housing for people that are below this poverty line income. They might have some records. Somebody's not going to give them a chance. People are way less likely to give people chances now in that thing. So it's going to have, like every good intentional thing they try to put out, it's going to have unintended consequences that are actually going to probably hurt the people that they're trying to help the most. So to Jared's point, you have to plan really well now. That makes sense? Like professional matters. You're planning. You're not just going, like I like to wing things. You can't do that. That's why I have my wife that helps, I have a vision, but she helps make sure the vision gets put and implemented for long-term thinking.
Sure, so I'm guessing pretty much everybody who has rentals right now is already rolled on to the month-to-month thing because of COVID. And
Yeah, good question.
You weren't gonna touch the rental, you weren't gonna touch that lease with a 50-foot pole, right? So now when this comes up and we're able to do, change, are we now re-signing to 1-year leases with all these people?
So it's a good question. Let me nuance it just a little bit. So I asked the same question.
Okay.
I was like, so if I was forced into a month-to-month tenancy
Right.
because you wouldn't let me evict anybody,
Correct.
so now am I screwed because you forced me into a month-to-month tenancy? So June 30th is kind of like the official memorandum ends on June 30th, right? She thought it was 60, maybe 90 days where you have this window where you want to immediately give notice that you're raising rent and you're offering to let them sign a new lease. If they refuse the lease, then you can terminate tenancy.
Okay.
So there's this little window where if you've been month to month, because you've been forced that way, they'll treat you as if you were in a long-term tenancy. If you miss that window, you're screwed.
And that window starts
June
July
30th.
what?
June 30th.
June 30th.
Yep.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay.
So what if it's not a matter that you were forced onto a month-to-month lease, you just chose that, but is it beneficial for us then to revisit that?
You better change it.
Yeah, as a landlord in Washington, we're out of that.
Yeah.
And I get the advantage of it, lots of flexibility, no longer.
Sounds like that's gone now.
That's
so.
gone.
So would your recommendation be, if you have somebody who's like, yeah, I'm going to be a long-term tenant, like, I mean, I want to be here for a long time, to still just do 12-month leases with that person and say, hey, January 1, I'll come over, knock on the door, and we'll get you a new lease hooked up, and, we'll do another 12 months?
That's a good question. I mean, so sometimes I'll build in rent increases in the lease.
Yeah.
So if I would be okay with that.
Okay.
I mean, if I had I just signed a really good tenant in Walla Walla, and we kind of were trying to figure out, I was like, hey, we're either going to raise the rent in a year or we can raise it now partway. That average will stay the same. They're like, yeah, we'll sign 2 years at this level. Cool,
Right.
done.
Okay.
Cool.
I personally don't like to, I've got 21 houses and like 24, 25 units. So if that means that every month two properties are coming up.
Right.
So I like to try to get as long-term as I can.
Yeah, and I'm the same way when I'm looking at my tenants. Is I want the long-term tenant because generally they want to care for the property because it's their home, they're living in it. It's not a 6-month deal.
Right.
But I just strategically thinking, would it be my favor to do a 12-month and then just go back and say, hey, awesome renter who's been doing amazing, like, don't have to get out, but we're doing a new lease and we just do this every 12 months, or say, hey, yeah, if you want to be here for 3-4 years, like,
So can you guys all hear what he's saying? Okay.
Sorry.
So the only, if you have a question, if you can stand up and say it so everybody can hear. The only spot where that would shift is strategic, and that's if you start, and this is where I'm feeling the bite a little bit, is I got a lot of people on 2+ year leases.
Right.
All of a sudden the rental market goes vertical, and
Yeah.
I'm stuck down here.
yeah.
So if you start to feel like, hey, there's a lot of shortage in houses and everything. I mean,
Right.
people that want to buy still have to rent because they can't move anywhere. This would be a great time for me to stick to 12 months for a really long time.
right.
Yeah. You lose flexibility.
Yeah.
So literally, if you have 24 rentals, yeah, it sucks that you have to do it, but you have somebody on staff that
Right, I'm not actually doing it.
he's not actually doing it. So again, it's you need flexibility in order to, you don't want to tie your hands any more than they're already being tied.
Right.
And so again, that's something that's got to be your your own personal decisions. Everybody hear the new tax proposal that they're going to try to push through? So if you haven't, really quick, they've talked about killing 1031 exchanges. They want.
Does everybody know what a 1031 exchange is? Raise your hand if you don't know what it is. It's okay if you don't know what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Then they're talking about changing the corporate rates from 21 to 28%. They're looking at changing the capital gains tax from 24 to 44%, and they're basically looking to screw you in every way possible to pay for their agendas. Okay, right or wrong, it doesn't matter.
And real quick, so they were going to pass a capital gains tax. They passed one
In Washington.
in Washington, but they, at the last minute, thank God for all the lobbying money behind real estate, got real estate exempted now. Don't know how confident I feel about that in the future.
Well,
So here that the capital gains on the federal level and potentially capital gains on the state level just went up to numbers that approach 50%.
now hold on one
Yeah.
one
So it's-
one second.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
However, going back to lobbying, we have tried to pass cap gains taxes, income taxes in Washington State. It's in our Constitution that they can't pass it. These things have been struck down 10 times. Not saying it's going to happen on 11th here. If you want to put some money behind somebody, find a lobbyist or an attorney group that is fighting these things. That's where I would say, because they will fight this and they will take it to the Supreme Court of Washington and try to get this overturned. Not saying it's going to happen, but that takes money. And
they haven't passed the federal tax stuff, the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, right now is in draft form. So like right now the draft is on income, it's based on a certain amount of income. I have a lot of friends that would still get hit with that income level. And if you start selling a couple properties that have appreciated a lot, you're gonna hit that threshold. So I don't wanna go too far down like what the specific proposals are.
Yeah.
I think the umbrella is taxes are not going down. They're going one direction, and it's just a question of how much.
yeah. Yes, ma'am. Well, they haven't got rid of it
haven't
yet.
got rid of it yet.
They proposed it.
Yes.
Yeah, so again, I don't think those things are passing. Corporate rate's probably going to go up. I don't think it's passing. We have too many, there's too many moderate Democrats and they're not moving fast enough. And Joe Manchin, I don't think they'll get him to go on this. They are trying to throw the SALT deduction back in, which is state and local income or state and local taxes and your mortgage deductions over $10,000, which that obviously helps the poor, not. It's for the rich. So they're trying to get rid of that. So these things haven't passed, and the likelihood of them passing is small, but you need to be prepared again. There's going to be opportunities, but it goes back, you have to know when you are buying these trading cards, what is my value if X happens?
Right.
Okay, so if I'm buying apartment buildings and all of a sudden they say no 1031 exchanges, cap gains goes through the roof, right? What are people gonna do? Well, they're not gonna sell their apartment buildings, or they're gonna buy newer ones and they're gonna hold them for a long time, and they're just gonna hold them. And the trading value is, they're not gonna be as valuable because they're not gonna be as openly traded, right? So things are gonna change. You just have to change with it, but you can't buy things and just look at a 2-month outlook. You have to look at the next 3, 5, 10 years and anticipate what could happen, and have I planned for this to happen? Make sense? So being well educated really matters, and it goes back to being professional. Being professional means you read up on new rules and ordinances. You read up on things that might happen that are going to affect your industry. You read up on all these things. You become well educated. If you don't have time to be well educated, you pay an accountant and an attorney really, really well.
Yeah, and let me offer. So this is my dad. He's a tax attorney. He's retired, so you can't hire him. But one of the things that he taught me is what I would call scenario running, which is kind of what Ellie's talking about. But I want to try to make it like applicable. I think it's like hard when you're a small person and you got like 5 properties to be like, well, I don't have the money to go spend on all these attorneys and CPAs and stuff. Like I do all this shit myself. So like, how do we make it so like for normal us people, right? They don't have like 10 commercial buildings. How does it work? So what I like to do is like take my property and say, okay, scenario 1, what happens if these things pass? Then how much, if I sold, would I make? Scenario 2, all right, well, if the numbers are different. So I tend to build spreadsheets because I'm pretty comfortable with that. So then I can actually just copy and paste a variety of scenarios and change some numbers around. And then you can really quickly see it's probably not gonna get worse than this, but it probably won't get better than this. And so once you can create those upper and lower bounds, you could start feeling like, all right, am I good with this bad scenario? Am I good with this upper scenario? And what's my highest probability scenario? And then keep adjusting that, if that makes sense.
It's like a flip, right?
Yeah.
When I buy a flip,
Yeah.
I always guess it's going to cost me more than I think it's going to cost me to fix it up. And I always think it's going to sell for less than I think it's going to sell for. And then I always have an optimistic number in my head, which I've blown past my optimistic numbers in the last 12 months. If anybody's had flips, I'm sure you have as well. But you're always basing it on the low end on the sale and the high end on the rehab, right? And if you do that, you can protect yourself or make better informed decisions.
Yeah, so big picture, I think taxes are going up.
So what capacity?
It's at what level? I do think that we're probably gonna, I don't know where we're gonna lose it. Is it 1031s? Is it step ups? I don't know. But I think we're gonna get hit in some way. So I think we plan for that. I would offer that if you've got more than probably 4 or 5 rentals, that you should start looking at self-directed Roth 401ks. So I can just save you a whole lot of research. I was on the phone with an attorney that was like $500 an hour, and you could literally hear him like doing stuff in the background as he's talking to me. And I was like, he's like, do you mind if, because I was going to do a self-directed IRA. And so I'm like specific with my language. Self-directed Roth, so you don't pay taxes when you go out and sell. 401k. There's so many advantages. Like, I got to tell you, it's probably one of the best things I've done in the last 5 years. I have a lot of money that I've been able to put there, and now it grows tax-free, which is it's actually a chunk for me. And when I go and pull it out, when I'm 59 and a half or whatever, it's also tax-free. So that's the strategy that I'm playing, is I'm trying to figure out how do I get as much money in this pool as I can, because then even if they do jax all these laws, I don't care. And once it's inside of your 401k, you can then sell it all you want and not pay tax on it. Yeah. If you held it for 365 plus 1 days.
Yeah. And you can also do like, what, 2 to 3 deals a year out of a Roth. And so you can buy rentals with that Roth and put that in the Roth and those things. So
right. The reason I focused on the 401ks
that's what I meant.
is because you can borrow. So if say I go to buy a $200,000 house and I've got $50,000 of money in my IRA and I borrow 150?
Yeah.
Whatever. I borrow the other 75% from Elliot. And I go to sell that property later, I have to pay 40% of 75% of the money. So it just wipes you out, if that makes sense. If I use a 401k, same transaction, same everything, I just put it in a different named entity, Elliot can lend me money at like 4, 5, 6%. And
add a zero behind that, maybe.
You can borrow money, and when you go to sell, you don't have to pay any extra tax. So what I'm doing is I'm hand picking the properties that I bought for half off. Because every once in a while, we all have gotten lucky, right? Where we're like, man, I work all year, but that was the deal. That's the house that I'm sneaking over here.
Yeah.
Because now my cash on cash is amazing. And if I go to sell it, all of that money stays for free, tax-free. And more importantly, it stays where I can keep growing it tax-free. So if I were to offer like one home run hit, it would be in a tax environment that's going up, the self-directed Roth 401k is the play.
Yeah. Another thing, how many people here are considered like real estate professionals that do this for more than 750 hours a year? We got a handful of you. Trump in the tax cuts put where you can cost segregate properties. And so we did this on our singles, or currently doing this on our singles and doubles and our other ones. But your singles and doubles, I can post a link to the website. It's $400 for a single or a double per property to do this cost segregation. You can capture a lot of that if you don't plan on keeping that property for a long period of time. There is some other implications on there, but there is some benefits there. If you have a high income year, you can depreciate and not pay as much taxes on that income. Again, I'm not a CPA, but does that make sense?
Right. Raise your hand if you got, let's say, 5 or more rentals, just so I know. Okay. So there's I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much, but like I think if you're in that group, that's kind of a separate conversation. So like if you're building up 1 or 2, I think the rules that we focused on at the beginning of the conversation are really good. Yep. If you're at 5 or more, we might have a separate group conversation so other people don't feel like they've got to listen to it, a bunch of tax code. But then we can really get into how to play the game at a level where you're starting to click up.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, let's dive into our market really quick. Anybody try to buy a house lately? Yeah. Yeah, not easy, right?
Try.
So currently there's 150 homes on the market that you can move into right this minute.
Right.
In a market that's healthy in Tri-Cities, there's 8 to 1,200 listings probably. We've been in a low inventory environment we've been under 4, 5 to 4 in the last, with the appreciation run up that we've seen. Literally, there is nothing on the market. People aren't moving, people aren't selling, and driving prices up. The issue also now is a perfect storm with COVID and supply chains, is there's no materials to build these houses. Literally right now with the price of lumber, a year ago, $50,000 worth of lumber would build you 10 houses. Currently, $50,000 worth of lumber builds you 2.5 houses. So your costs are exponential if you can get materials. So windows are 6 to 12 weeks out. I'm ordering a simple blind for my office. One came in, the other one wasn't ordered right. It's another 6 weeks out just to get a redone blind. Simple things are getting screwed up exponentially. Appliances.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, appliances are getting screwed up. Fixtures are getting screwed up. Things that are coming from China are getting screwed up. Anything that has to do with a microchip is getting screwed up.
But stuff that has to do with concrete's getting screwed up. Like we had curbing, they screwed it up, ripped it out. So we're getting ready to put curbing back in. He was here yesterday and he's like, I hope they still have concrete.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about, bro? He's like, we went to Lowe's to get concrete. He's like, they're out. We started going outside the Tri-Cities to get concrete, couldn't get it. Went to Home Depot, they don't have any. They don't even know when they're gonna get it. They don't have a 2-month projection. They can see their pipeline. He's like, they actually can't even see it for 2 months.
Yeah.
So hear that there's weird things that are starting to run out.
So where this is applicable is who's flipping houses or trying to flip houses or buying rentals and fixing up rentals? A lot of people, okay. It's going to take longer than you think. If you have a flip that you say, 12 months ago I could get this flip done in 3 months, this flip could take you 6 months. So what does that change? That changes holding costs. Your holding costs, your loan costs, your insurance costs, your capital opportunity costs. Things change, prices change. Your rehab budget just increased at their 4.2% inflation rate, but it probably increased a lot more than that. So things are gonna cost more. So right now, I just walked a flip. I'm like, I could get this thing done for like 25. I budgeted 50 to do this. So then that's because my holding costs are gonna be longer. There's gonna be always weird things. So some of that's just normal increase in my costs, but things are gonna cost way more. So you have to go back to do you have the runway to do this? The other thing that changes in this environment is, has everybody heard about they're talking a lot about the looming foreclosure crisis because of forbearances, right? Has everybody heard people talk about that? You see it on YouTube all the time. Housing market's gonna crash, housing market's gonna crash. I think that's a lot less likely scenario based on a supply and demand reasoning. However, you just increased your holding time on these properties where a lot more things can go wrong in 6 months or 9 months or whatever. Or you're building a home, things take longer. You better be able to weather the storm. So where that creates opportunity is once you find a really good deal, you want to hold on to it, or you can wholesale it and get more money for that deal. Where that also creates opportunity is if you are more efficient at getting your properties out and can piece things together and are more creative, you can get your property out faster, you can make money. If you're buying deals, the market is helping you quite a bit right now. Right. So there is opportunity in this scenario because a lot of people are going to throw up their hands and say, I can't find anything, and just be done with it because it's really hard. More people will fail right now than I think they'll get pushed out of the market now than probably any time in the last 10 years, I would say, because it's not because they're crashing and losing their ass, it's because they can't find anything. Right. And so they give up because people give up very easily.
Quick question. Do you think the supply chain shortage is due to just the market being off, or do you think it's because everything was shut down for so long?
So the supply chain is screwed up for multiple reasons. Canada's probably pissed at us. They own most of the lumber mills. They're pissed at us because we killed Keystone. And so they own most of the mills. There's not a shortage of lumber. There's a shortage of, they're limiting the supply from the mills to screw us probably. All our chips, there's a vehicle shortage, because they're putting hundreds of chips in these cars, and they're legacy chips that make the least amount of money. Those are all made in Taiwan. And so they can make more money selling non-legacy chips that are newer chips. So they've shifted because the car guys said, I don't want these chips right now. And now all of a sudden they can't get them. You have a shortage in workers, people that want to go back to work because we've added stimulus money. Who would go back to work if you could make 20% more not working? Right. And you just put natural pressure on all the markets in general. I watched a interesting video. Normally in the LA port, maybe once every 3 to 6 months, they might have one ship sit for 24 hours. At one point, they had 32 ships sitting offshore. They can't get the stuff unloaded, which then they can't find truck drivers. They can't get these things. So it is causing inflation. Right. We are in an inflationary environment, which you want to own assets in an inflationary environment. And so buying and owning assets right now matters, but the demand hasn't increased so much as just the supply got screwed up, and it showed that the weakness in our supply chain, we were only able to last a short amount of bandwidth until we had no more supply. And now we can't catch back up because there's 8 million job openings and only 235,000 or whatever people went back to work last month because they don't want to work, which you can't blame people if they're doing that. You blame the government.
So I actually have a private Facebook group with a bunch of people about that issue, because it's just been super interesting watching how that's happened, right? I mean, my brother-in-law was going to get a bike, like an $8,000 bike. They're like, it's a 2-year waiting list. How's that even possible, right? Like, I tried to get shoes, couldn't get shoes for what I needed for 6 months. Like, everything. Protein bars, they're like, we're out of an ingredient. Like, if there's 50 things that go in it, but you're missing one, you can't make it. And so, like, that's happening. I've had friends tell me stories like, oh, this is why it happened in lumber. Like, and because they don't want to call it inflation for some reason, I think political. And I'm like, well, cool, bro. Tell me why they don't have Rice Krispies at Fred Meyer for the last 3 straight weeks.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not in the business of trying to like know why it's happening, honestly. I want to know what I can do to protect myself against it. Because I think it's really easy to mentally masturbate about like a bunch of theories.
Or about Jared in general.
So we all know what Elliot does, like 10 o'clock at night. So my thing is, we have a special kind of paint that we use for all my rentals. So it's systematic. And my brother-in-law uses it too, and he's like, hey, I was in at Sherwin-Williams. They can't get your paint for 2 months. That didn't even occur to me as a possibility. Like, it's paint.
But it's got...
Is that what? Just so they're not even giving out samples right now. So when COVID hit, I didn't know if Lowe's was going to be considered an essential business, right? So we figured out what we would need for all the flips we had in progress, but weren't doing, and all the rental properties, and we just went down to Lowe's and just bought everything. So I might encourage you, if you think you've got some things in progress, or when you do a flip, you kind of know what you do, if you've kind of systemized that, then if you have a chance to pick some stuff up, it would really suck to get close to the finish line and miss some key things.
Yeah.
To throw in my theory, that's part of it. Perceived scarcity creates scarcity. And that's one of the reasons you see people are grabbing a lot of warehouse and stuff right now, because they're tired of waiting. They're going to stock their own stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So their job can move forward.
Yeah. However, my number one goal is to look after me and my family and my business. So,
Right.
I mean, that sucks, but at the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Well, and nobody's making a run on Rice Krispies.
Yeah.
Because they're stockpiling Rice Krispies. There's some shortage somewhere. Sure. And if I need Rice Krispies for my business, I need to figure out a way to stockpile that crap. So as a real estate investor, I would say, figure out what, like, paint is one that if I have a tenant move out, I have like nicer, like, houses I would live in. So like, I don't usually get my properties trashed, but like, I have to repaint, touch up walls. So if I don't have paint, that's a real thing for me. So I may stock up on a whole bunch of paint, and that may be one of the key things for my rentals. I probably don't have to worry about a lot other than that. Maybe some countertops, but I would just say, figure out where you think you could be stuck and see if you can stockpile that. I mean, if I'm gonna spend it in the next year, say I buy $2,000 worth of paint, right? And I sit on it and eventually use it. So what's $2,000 at 5%? Right, that's $100 of interest that you just lost. The second that you run all over the whole state looking for paint, you're not gonna care about $100.
Yeah. So again, I'm gonna go back to, I think our key theme for tonight really is professional, planning and being professional. So if I'm a CEO of a company, when I'm looking at today, but a CEO's job is to look 3-5 years in the future, look into the future and plan for the future, right? So everything we're doing right now, and we've talked about tonight, is things to get your mind thinking about how you plan for the future with whatever you're doing in this stage of the real estate game, right? So supplies are one thing, taxes are another thing, tenants and leases are another thing. Everything now is professional, and you need a plan. So you need to have time where you're sitting and you're just writing down, okay, what do I think I'm gonna need? You know, maybe it's you and your husband, or you and your girlfriend, or just you and your friend, or what, you and yourself. Plan, okay, I got this coming up. What am I gonna need for this, right? What happens if this happens, right? Jared and I, whenever we look at deals all the time together, we literally come Chrissy, him, and I, we sit there and we spitball. What she's got her computer, Jared's got his computer. We put the numbers in here. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this? We looked at a property and it's like, okay, we're buying it for X. And I'm like, what's our replacement cost of that property? Well, it's 1.5 times what we're buying it for. Well, that might make this a decent deal because we're buying it below replacement cost with the way the rates or costs are going. So there's different ways to look at this and really plan this out. And that's the fun thing about this, is really looking into growing something that matters and growing something that lasts. There's a really good book called Built to Last that really talks about building things for the future. And so that's really, I think, if we can say one thing when we drive home, think about the future right now and how you grow.
The other thing I'd add is, I think Elliot brings up a good point. Like, we'll soundboard stuff together. I think there's real value in creating some relationships with people, so that if you, like Elliot and I think very differently, and so it's great to actually have somebody else who you can throw ideas around. Because if I get two me's, or just one me, honestly, that's not that useful. But once I have another me and then another person who disagrees with me but is smart and also has real estate, I don't want to ask my best friend that has no houses, right? Like, be friends with who you're gonna be friends with, but when it comes to finances, surround yourself with people that have money. And then just soundboard ideas. So I think we're in a period of time where like as the law changes a lot, as strategy changes a lot, like if Elliot's got some approaches that are really unique that I'm not doing, it's useful for me to hear it, because I'm assuming he's betting his financial life on it.
Yeah.
So the more people you can surround yourself with that are doing this like really intentionally, like really as a job, I just try to like network with those people, because I think you're trying to soak their brains so you have all that knowledge while still having a life.
Yeah, and one perfect quick example, Chrissy and I, on one of our properties, we're like, what happens if the 1031 goes away and you can only write off $500,000, 1031, 1031, $500,000, they're going to cap it there. And so we're sitting there soundboarding, and she's like, what if you just condoized them and you sold all the properties as condo individually, and we're under that $500,000 threshold? Again, there will be ways to get around things. You just have to take a different road, right? But if you're not talking to people, bringing up questions, thinking outside the box, talking to professionals or people in the industry, and being a professional, you're never going to be there, and you're going to struggle when things change. Because all the books that Brandon Turner and these guys wrote, they're great books for concepts, but they don't apply in this environment. Things are always changing. That's why people keep writing new books. If it was always the same, there'd only be 2 books. Right?
So